in the struggle in the South. So I marched all over this country because I believe that we are heirs and descendants of kings and queens of Africa, and that God gave us that inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and this America gave us that in its Constitution. And I have a passion, particularly passion, a strong passion for my people, first for God, family, and then my people. And my whole life has been dedicated to that struggle. Out of that struggle, I recall we would always go before the political kingdoms of the world. I remember marching up to Montgomery, Alabama, and saying, "Pharaoh, let our people go." And then we marched to Washington for Adam Clayton Powell. We marched in Jackson, Mississippi. We even marched in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We said, "Open up these doors and let us in." I realized that whenever we marched, our feet started at the church, and then we ended at the political kingdom, whether it was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Montgomery, Alabama. We always marched to that king. We said, "Let us go." I said, "We better get in those doors. We better see about getting in there and sitting in there and taking care of these problems for ourselves." And that's when I shifted into politics. And I began to help men and women that I felt would bring justice and equity to their administrations. There was a governor who was running, a man who was running for governor in my state, and he was not the endorsed candidate. But I knew that this was a Jewish man who had to change his name in order to get into the business. And he made millions on General Electronics. And I knew, because he had black women in his business, he had black people at all levels, from management on down. Outside of his door in the 60s and 70s was a black woman. I said, this man is also helping young people to go to school, those teenage parents at that time, to get an education. I said, if he's running for governor, I want to help him. And I did. And as a result of that, he asked me to become Secretary of State. And I used that office to open up the doors of government in a way that blacks moved into positions more than they had ever moved in before. First of all, I was able to get him to set up an affirmative action council. I resigned 9 months after he appointed me because a black woman was insulted. And so I told him that I would have to leave. But I said, if I come back, and he asked me to come back, I said, you sign an executive order which will provide for an affirmative action council subject to you, with majority women and minorities. And as a result of that, I had him appoint 12 women judges and 13 black judges in 21 months, which was more than the whole history of the Commonwealth that had been appointed.
This is all done in Pennsylvania.
And then we looked at all the boards and commissions which were in my office, and we made blacks available to sit on those. We reduced the voting age to 18 so young people could vote and register, and we would go out and encourage them to do that. And so these are the kind of things that we did. And then I became a member of the Democratic National Committee, and I began to do the same things there. We fought to make sure that 25% of all members of the Democratic National Committee were black. Even though we had 12% of the population, we said we are 25 to 30% of the Democratic Party. And so that's when Basil Patterson became the first vice chair. And then I became chair of the Black Caucus of the party when Mickey Leland moved on to chair of the Congress, and then of course he died. I was his vice chair. And I remember when the 1988 convention came, in fact the 1984 convention, I was the one that had Jesse Jackson's arrangements to make at that convention, because I had been on the site committee. That was a tremendous occasion. And I made sure that our political royalty was there to see that crowning moment. The Rosa Parks, the Dr. Height, the Ben Hooks. I made sure that they were there and had seats of honor because they had struggled all their lives. And I remember riding over with Jesse Jackson alone in the limousine to the auditorium. And then I saw his daddy, Daddy King, sitting, waiting for him. And I just sat on his lap and just We just finished these stuff. It's a moment of great history.
Very good. You know, we've got a 30-second break coming up here, Dr. Tucker, and after which we will continue this conversation, and we'll give you an opportunity to talk about not only some of the past glories dealing with the party, but also some of the things that you're involved in now. More specifically, I think that folks sort of are now connecting you with the struggle with Time Warner and the so-called gangster rappers, and we want to talk about that when we come back. And we'll be back with you shortly after this commercial break.